that so far the Senate has conducted the screening of 23 nominees for ministerial appointments. The Senate will now resume the screening of the remaining nominees. I thank you, Mr. President. I so move.
The Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to second the motion moved by the Leader of the Senate. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those who are in support of the motion that we step down all other items on the order paper to move straight into the concluding screening of ministerial nominees, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, in order to carry out this exercise in conformity with our Standing Order 12 relating to floor privileges, I will move a motion that the Senate do admit the Special Advisor to the President on National Assembly Matters, the nominees, non-serving senators, and other government officials accompany them into the Senate chamber. I so move, Mr. President.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to second the motion moved by Leader of the Senate that we allow strangers to move into the chambers of the Senate for further discussion for today, the screening of the nominees sent by Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded. Those who are in support of the motion that we step down our rules to allow strangers to approach the Senate hallowed chambers, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. To the Special Advisor to the President on National Assembly Matters can now bring in the nominees. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished senators, in order to continue with the screening of the nominees for ministerial appointments, I move that the Senate do resolve into a committee of the whole to enable us as a committee continue with the exercise.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion that the Senate do resolve to Committee of the Whole to continue proceedings for today. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that this Senate do resolve into Committee of the Whole to continue the screening of the ministerial nominees. Those who are in support of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate will now resolve into Committee of the Whole. Yes, Mr. Nominee, Alake Oladele Henry, you are welcome to the hallowed chamber of the Senate. If you have anything to add to your CV, you can do so. Otherwise, summarize so that the world will know you, Nigerians will know you, and as you are coming in to serve them. The floor is yours.
Thank you, distinguished Senate President, distinguished senators. It's my rare honor to be before you this morning to present myself. My name is Oladele Henry Alake. I hail from Ikoro, Ekiti, in a shore of the LCDA, Ijero local government area of Ekiti State. I attended Surulere Baptist Primary School in Lagos and went to Christ School Ado Ekiti for my O levels and back to Igbobi College, Yaba, Lagos for my A levels, and then proceeded to the University of Lagos for my bachelor's degree in political science and capped it with a master's degree in mass communication. And thereafter, I did my national youth service at Ogun State Broadcasting Corporation in Abeokuta in 1979 and went on to full-time journalism. My first stint was at the Radio Lagos LTV8 when the late Alhaji Lateef Jakonde was the governor of Lagos State. I served there as a senior sub-editor and on level 8, which was the entry point for graduates at that time in the public service. And I created a unit which was not in existence before I got there, and that catapulted me to level 9. So I spent 1 month on level 8, which was a record then in the annals of civil service structure in Nigeria. And I was there, developed the station, the news and current affairs department of the station, and put the station on the map. And then in 1985, December, the late Chief MKO Abiola had hunted me and pulled me out to the Concord Press of Nigeria, his newspapers then, a group of papers, as a member of the elite editorial board of the entire Concord group. And I was there, ran a column for 3 years on the editorial board, and also expanded the scope and the spectrum of journalism in that newspaper. And in 1989, Chief MK Abiola named me the editor of the Sunday Concord, one of the greatest titles at that time in the Concord Group and in newspapering in Nigeria. And I went into it, recalibrated the newspaper, reorganized it, rejuvenated it, and put it on the map of journalism in Nigeria. And at some point, it was the highest circulating newspaper in this country as a weekly. And of course, in the process, in 1992, December 1992, the late M.K. Abiola, having become quite close to him, not only in journalism as editor of his paper, but also as his public affairs advisor and perception manager, he called me and intimated me with the idea of his running for political office, specifically as president of Nigeria. And after arguing back and forth, we went on to it, and in January of 1993, January 3rd precisely, he declared his intention. And that intention, if you recall, those who are very private to all the happenings, the political happenings in the firmament of Nigeria at that time, there was a newspaper advert which was titled "Why I Want to Serve," which was the first time he actually made it known nationally and internationally. Of course, before then it had been in the realm of speculation, but his first official statement of his wanting to run and the reasons adduced was published. And I wrote that letter to Nigerians. I wrote it on his bed, in his bedroom, and I advertised it in all radio stations, all TV stations, and all newspapers in this country. And that was the beginning of the June 12 saga. And I was in the vortex of the entire saga from beginning to the end. And in between, there were so many escapades, so many operations. And in the process, I toured this country, visited every local government in this country. And that was the third time I would tour the entire country in my career. The first time was as a youth corper in 1979, when the late revered Chief Obafemi Awolowo ran for office for the presidency of this country. I was a cub reporter as a youth corper, but I accompanied the entourage throughout the length and breadth of Nigeria. The second time was in 1983, also when Chief Obafemi Awolowo ran again for the presidency. I covered the entire campaign from beginning to the end. And in 1984, when the then General Muhammadu Buhari was head of state, he did a nationwide tour as military head of state. I also covered the entire tour and went to every state of this country at the time. And of course, when my own publisher in 1993 ran, I was right in the middle of it from beginning to the end. And thereafter, you all are familiar with the circumstances of that saga, of the June 12 saga. After the unfortunate annulment, we plunged into one of the very pernicious sections of our history in this country. And I was right in the middle of it, and I had a rare privilege and selective exposure to be part and participant observer of the entire scenario. Of course, we went into the struggle. I joined forces with all the Democrats of this country and those who are pushing for democracy to push out the military. We call them militocracy. They practiced militocracy at the time. And of course, as an editor of the publisher whose mandate was annulled, there was really no choice. And it wasn't just a professional thing. It was a passion for the best for this country that we all carried at the time. So, the present president of Nigeria, then a senator, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in the vanguard and the forefront of the struggle, the pro-democracy struggle of this country at that time. And I joined forces with him, and we started all the covert and overt operations to push out the military at the time. In fact, at some point, my office was shut for 2 years by the late Abacha, and we were on the streets. But we were undaunted because we were propelled by the conviction that there was a need to get our country on the path of progress development, and democracy. So we shunned all sacrifices, pains of sacrifices and all that. And at a point, the house of our president, now our president, was firebombed in Lagos. And those of us who were leg operatives of the entire Nadeco struggle were in jeopardy. Our houses were ransacked, we were chased, and at some point, guns were brandished at me between Ikeja Airport and the Concord Press. It was all over the news. It wasn't a covert thing at that time. And when the heat was too much, I also had to leave the country. And I was away and joined forces with those who were in exile, our current president, Professor Bolaji Akiyemi, Professor Wole Soyinka, the late Commodore Dan Suleiman was one of the people with us in London. That was when the London pro-democracy seed was sown by the pro-democracy activists at that time. And from there, we went to the US, and we were sowing the pro-democracy seed and carrying the fervor throughout the world. And for 5 years, without firing a single shot, we held the jugular of the military. And we succeeded, of course, with the cooperation, active cooperation, and sacrifices of those who were in Nigeria at the time to chase away the military. And here we are, today, by the grace of God, we have the democracy that we had all yearned for. Thank you very much.
Senator Sani Musa.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair, my respected distinguished colleagues, the nominee. First and foremost, I will congratulate you for being one of the best to be nominated. I have just few questions. One, the question has to do with the nation's image and the rebranding that we have thought has been going on for a long time. In the last 4 years that I have been in the Senate, I knew that the budget of Ministry of Information, National Orientation Agency had been coming. And you will always see that they are talking about rebranding Nigeria, Nigeria's image. Nigeria's image is not only to brand it internationally, but even within Nigeria. So far, I can say that I have not seen much that we have achieved looking at the scenario of things in this country. We know that rebranding has to do with people. It has to do with governance. It has also to do with the cultural and the heritage that we do have. Tourism, investment, and what we will also be able to have to produce here, not only in terms of products, but even our attitude to export out of this country. If for any reason you happen to be in an office that require this country, you should be able to, as an expert, know where are the ills and how do we mitigate them. Instead of spending so much with the few resources, from the few resources we have. I will recall the former Minister of Information has mentioned that we are going digital. I can tell you 80% of Nigerians do not know what that digital transformation is. And a lot of billions of naira have so far been spent. If you happen to be in that position, what are the measures you are going to bring to mitigate that? And how can our passports be made to be respected by other nations? Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Yao Sahabi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Yao Sahabi Alhaji, representing Zamfaranos Senatorial District. Mr. Nominee, let me first of all congratulate you for coming this far in your chosen career and profession, which is journalism, I believe. Mr. Nominee, if I could recall, there was a bill that was brought into this chamber in the 9th Senate, which has to do with regulation and the supervision of social media. Some people were for this bill, while others were vehemently against it. Should this country be opportune to get you appointed by Mr. President as Minister of Information, how do you intend to reconcile these two positions? Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Cyril Fasui.
Good afternoon, Senate President sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues. My name is Cyril Fasui, Ekiti North, the fountain of knowledge. Standing before you is a nominee from this fountain of knowledge, a very loyal, dependable, and responsible ally of the current president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We call the nominee Ajiroba. The meaning of Ajiroba is one that waits to see the king. Standing before you is Ajiroba Dele Alake, very responsible, very dependable. We will open him up to any question you want to ask. Because we know he's a responsible and is intelligent, ready to answer any question. And without much ado, I want us to know that this Senate will do Mr. President a lot of good by approving his nomination to be one of the ministers of Nigeria. Thank you.
So in other words, the distinguished Senator Cyril Fasui from Ekiti. Ekiti senators have no objection and they have no question to ask him. So in that case, let's concentrate on those who have questions that can enlighten Nigerians. Distinguished Senator Mongunu.
Distinguished Senate President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohammed Tahir Munguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial district. Mr. Nominee, congratulations. I've gone through your resume and also the struggles you made towards actualization of the June 12th mandate. I want to equally recall with nostalgia that I am part and parcel of the activists as a young man and a member of the House of Representatives. The late Chief MKO Abiola recruited about 3 of us to go to Cyprus to represent Nigeria as true representative of the people, not to allow Shonekon to go there as the head of Nigeria, but being true representative of the people. He paid for our fees to go. In fact, I'm traveling out of the country for the first time, first class. That time, we went to Cyprus to represent Nigeria, but unfortunately, we could not be allowed to attend the venue of the conference. We are not admitted, and we came back to Nigeria, just to show that I am part and parcel of the struggle for the actualization of the June 12th mandate. Well, my question is, there is a need for paradigm shift towards value reorientation in this country. Value reorientation in the sense that there is a need to make, more especially our young ones, to be patriotic, to be nationalistic in their outlook and thinking, and to think Nigeria first, the value of discipline in all our national endeavors and what have you. And then the agency that is charged with the responsibility of carrying out that mandate is the National Orientation Agency. Throughout my stay in the House of Representatives, I was privileged to have a glance at the budget of the National Orientation Agency. And their budget is not enough to carry out such a very sensitive responsibility that they have been charged to undertake. So, parabencho, looking at your resume, if Mr. President in his wisdom deems it fit to assign you the Ministry of Information and National Orientation, what steps are you going to take towards having a paradigm shift for the purpose of value reorientation in this country? That is my question. Thank you.
The distinguished Senator Ningi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Let me welcome Mr. Dele Alake to this hallowed chamber. And I would like to say, personally, I thought Dele Alake is one of the very best appointee of this government, and I thought he is doing an excellent job in the villa. And for me, Dele Alake is a fresh breath of air. As a spokesman, I don't see him as an attack dog journalist, neither do I see him as a hawk. Mr. President, if I were the president of this nation, I would have allowed Dele Alake to continue to be his spokesman. But I am not the president, so I have no choice. Having said that, I would like to refer to you, Dele, to our Constitution, 1999 Constitution, as amended. Clause 88, sub A and B. and I would like to, by the leave of the Senate President, to quickly read through. Now it says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, each house of the National Assembly shall have powers by resolution published in its journal and in the Gazette of the Federal Government of the Federation to direct or cause to be directed on an investigation, one, on any matter, and the catchword is on any matter, or things with the respect to which the powers to make laws, and then B, the conduct of affairs of any person, and the catchword there is any person, authority, ministry or government, department, charged or intended to be charged with the duty of or responsibility of. I quickly rise to make those, to call those phrases of the Constitution, because in the last 2 decades or so, particularly the Minister of the Government, and particularly the head of MDS, do not understand this. Neither do they appreciate it, neither probably they don't know. So as someone who is going to attend to federal executive meetings, because of your knowledge, your disposition, what will you say about these particular clauses? Several times here, the National Assembly called on ministers and head of NDS. Some of them deliberately turned this thing down. As a matter of fact, they don't see themselves as being respectable to this institution. And that's why I take time to make it to you that it is important to address these matters once you are past here and then the president appoints you as a minister. So what do you take these things for? How do you understand it? That is the question.
Distinguished Senator Tambua.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, my colleagues, let me join my colleagues that have spoken earlier than me in congratulating Egbon Dele Alake for your nomination to serve as Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And from your narration and the rendition you gave us of your journey and struggles in the development of our democracy, I can see that you have, to some extent, shared struggle, political struggle, and ideals, and possibly even coming from the same camp with the immediate past Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. What would you do differently from Alhaji Lai Mohammed, assuming you are tasked with the portfolio of Minister of Information of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Thank you.
I hope the nominee is taking record of the questions. Distinguished Senator Ismaila Kawu.
Thank you, Mr. President, my dear respected colleague. I am Suleiman Abdurrahman Kawu Sumaila, representing Kano South Senatorial District. Mr. President, my dear colleague, I don't want to repeat myself, but I quite agree with the previous speakers congratulating the nominee, and thank you, Mr. President, of nominating one of the best hand, which I think he will, if he became the Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, more officially his area, he will add value to to the Nigerian development or political development system. But I have a simple question to ask. Listening to you attentively and going through your resume, I cherish your struggle during June 12. Now, inshallah, you will be the member of Federal Executive Council soon. My only question or clarification, which I need from you is, how do you intend to what we perceive as injustice meted by our beloved Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa led and his vice presidential candidate, Chief Sylvester Ogu, who contested alongside with the late MKO Abiola in 1993. The last administration honored late Chief MKO Abiola and Babagana Kingibe was the highest national honor of the land. But despite the contribution of Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa led and Chief Sylvester Ogu, who contested alongside with Abiola, although the vice presidential candidate of Chief Abiola abandoned the struggle, joined the military, but the last administration honored him with the second national honor of the land, abandoned Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa and Chief Sylvester Ogu. Will you support me if I propose a bill to the National Assembly to, as a member of Federal Executive Council, will you support us to address that? No, I know what I'm saying. I know what I'm saying. Will you support the proposal to address that injustice meted to us? I from Kano, who represent Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa, and of course our nationalist Chief Sylvester Ogu. Thank you.
The last question should have been directed to our colleagues in the Senate, that if a proposal relating to a bill comes up, whether our colleagues will support. But for national honors, he was, from his narration, he was only in the June 12 struggle alongside the current president. He wasn't the prime mover of June 12 struggle. And he's not in a position to give anybody national honor. Senator Abiru.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, sitting as the chair, and my distinguished colleagues. First, I would like to congratulate the nominee, described as the Ajiroba, as described by my colleague, Senator Cyril Fasri. That's Ajiroba Dele Alake. I want to congratulate him on his nomination as a minister of as a potential minister of the Federal Republic. And I also want to say that I was very much engrossed with his sense of history when he was making his presentation, and I fully support his nomination as well. And I also like to thank the President of the Federal Republic for giving us one of the best that we can find in journalism, an accomplished personality that we have right in front of us. Now, having been part of history, particularly in the last 40 years, and the evolution of our democracy, even at the point where it was terminated, and of course, when it continued. What I would like to put across is for the nominee to share with us that how do we continue to protect and guard the democracy that has come to stay in Nigeria in particular,